I'm all right.
All right. We are currently live. We're in the thumbnail showing portion of the feed. And just going to give it a second and let some chatter start chatting before I hit the intro. Sorry about that rumble. That was just me moving the microphone into position. You can hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Excellent. I got you loud and clear as well.
I'm probably going to need to cut it hard at 8, but just letting you know.
Yeah, that's fine. I need to get out the door anyway. I got to shoot and greasing. All right, that's about a minute and a half there. I'm going to go ahead and run the intro. Good morning. That's right. It's just my big dome in the monitor this morning. Cameron is otherwise occupied, but I do have him here on the phone with us. Say good morning, Sunshine.
You can't tell me what to do.
Oh, no, I absolutely can. In fact, my First Amendment right protects my right to give you commands. It does not, however, guarantee that they'll be followed.
I see. Well, good morning. Good morning to everybody. I can't see the chat, so I'm just going to assume we've said good morning to all the lovely people.
We haven't yet, but I was about to start that. So His Majesty, Sergeant Major Lowry, opens with first blood this morning, saying good morning. I see GCM there. It says FTP, Film the Police, good morning to you. And then The Fit Life with Danielle. So Danny's with us. And it is Monday morning, so I assume that she's got a new video out that y'all need to go check out. GCM asked, what's the name of y'all's other YouTube page with 2 movies? We've made several movies, and some of them are on the BFM page. Some of them are on the East Atlanta video page. So that's, we've made several, so I'd have to know which 2 in particular you're talking about. Definitely go check out Coffee on East Atlanta Video. That's a great little short film we did, and it's just the heartwarming story of poor young Cameron, the theoretical professor, desperately searching for a cup of coffee on a Sunday in Georgia where nobody's open. But I see Dan Burks has also joined us, and he's pulling double duty on Facebook and YouTube. And there's my mother. Good morning, Ma. Love you. So this morning we are talking about the fair tax. As I have discussed in the past, there have been several different mechanistic maneuvers to repeal and replace and eliminate taxes at the federal level. There's a flat tax proposal. There's a fair tax proposal. And I prefer the fair tax for one reason primarily. When compared against the flat tax proposal, which is something like the 999 plan that Herman Cain suggested, the flat tax proposals all say something like, basically you'll have all the same taxes that you have currently, but they'll all be set to exactly one rate. So it will be 9% for everything. There are some proposals in that vein that go up as high as 15% on everything, but everything's capped at 15%, which is preferable to the current system. But the fair tax plan is even better because it makes all taxes voluntary. Now, you've heard people repeat the mantra, taxation is theft, taxation is theft. Taxation is not theft. I want to clear this up for you guys. Theft is the deceptive and illicit acquisition of property without the permission of the person who is being deprived. Taxation is not theft. It's armed robbery. A man with a gun threatens your life against the proviso that you will give him money in exchange for the life that he is threatening with a gun. That's what the IRS is. The IRS is state-sanctioned, armed robbery. It is worse than involuntary. It is worse than coercive. It is a direct threat against your life to secure your earnings against your will. It is armed robbery. So, over the last couple weeks, we've had a little fun on this channel and in the news generally, making fun of McCarthy because of the whole thing where he lost 14 votes before finally getting it with a 15th. And we cracked a lot of jokes about it. But then the very first day with him as Speaker in the 118th Congress, the Republicans of the Congress moved to abolish the IRS and the federal income tax. Now we're hearing some movement on the Fair Tax Act. Now, as we've discussed before, the expectation is not that this is going to go anywhere immediately, but I want to remind you, it took the dirty commie Democrats decades of slow pressure to cram things down your throat like Obamacare, like some of the taxes that they've pushed, like Obergefell, right? They do it by slow, steady pressure, and we can take a page from that book. If slow, steady pressure, starting with, hey, the 118th Congress has proposed that we abolish the IRS and all federal income taxes. Starting there, it fails, but now every Democrat is on record defending the IRS. And then we can start telling our Republican candidates, hey, if you do not stand for a fair tax plan, you don't get elected. If you're an incumbent and you are not actively working on fair tax, you're going to get primaried. Because we are tired of having guns pointed at us and having our property stolen. We're sick of it. Now, why is it that we're talking about this morning, Cameron?
Well, the Democrats began to basically to lie like they do. I saw stuff from Elizabeth Warren and Robert Fourth Reich. But the thing that really made me realize this was an important thing to talk about was a recent video from Sticks Hexenhammer. And I realized Sticks didn't understand certain things about the fair tax. He's young enough where the first time this debate happened, he just missed it. So there's people out there that don't know about it, and then there's people out there that are only tangentially aware of it. And the biggest thing is the fact that they refer to it as a 30% national sales tax.
Yeah, and before you debunk that claim, I want to show. Cameron just mentioned Elizabeth Warren. So Elizabeth Warren tweeted, "Does this sound fair? MAGA Republicans have a fair tax plan to hit American families with a 30% national sales tax on everything from groceries and gas to rent and health care. It's not fair to impose taxes on working people while giving massive tax breaks to the ultra-rich." Okay. There was a time that you may have been able to excuse Elizabeth Warren as being stupid. But you cannot honestly believe that she honestly believes this. We've also got Robert Fourth Reich here. The GOP's so-called fair tax proposal is one of the most regressive proposals in a generation, imposing a 30% federal sales tax on everything Americans buy from gas to food. There's nothing fair about it. It would punish the poor and middle class while helping the rich. That's a lie. And I've got this article that I want to read just a little bit of this from you or to you. This article comes from Forbes. It says Paul Krugman and Robert Reich's tax deception. Robert Reich and Paul Krugman are preeminent mainstream media mouthpieces of the redistributionist welfare state. They constantly disseminate the myths that the rich don't pay their fair share of taxes and Congress is about to slash taxes on the very rich. Yet they never attack the real source of America's problems, crony capitalism, the economic foundation of the welfare state in which rich and poor alike are partners in crime with the government to rip off their fellow Americans. Reich and Krugman also propagate the myth that America's deficit and economic problems could be eliminated simply by raising taxes on the rich and spending the new revenue on bigger government. So the first thing I want to say about this snippet is he talks about the habit of the Democrat to raise revenue by increasing taxes in order to spend the new revenue on bigger government. And there are several problems with that. Okay, we know, this is irrefutable, that when you lower tax rates, you increase tax base and revenue goes up. Increasing tax rates causes a loss of revenue. Now,
JFK called it the paradoxical truth.
Correct. Now, the paradoxical truth has been mapped out algorithmically on what we call the Laffer curve, and it is a fact that there's a point on the Laffer curve where if you lower taxes any more, then you start getting diminished returns. But that point is a pretty high level of reduction. Something like the 999 plan, for example, falls happily at the top edge of the Laffer curve, where you're getting maximum levels of tax reduction against the current paradigm and resulting in extraordinary increases in revenue. But put all that aside for a moment, the Democrat maneuver is always, hey, we're spending too much money, we're racking up deficits and debts, we need more taxes to come in, and then they take the new revenue and start more programs. Guys, if you're missing the rent and you pick up a side hustle to cover the difference, the new answer is not to go and subscribe to all the streaming services. You don't you do not improve your financial picture by adding additional costs when you can't afford the costs you've already got. That doesn't ever work, but it is perpetually the Democrat plan. Now, this article in particular I brought up because it talks about Krugman and Fourth Reich, Robert Fourth Reich, and how they constantly misrepresent the way taxes work, all their garbage about slashing taxes on the rich, and it's big evil and the rich don't pay their fair share. The top 50% of American income earners pay 100% of the federal tax burden, with the top 1% paying nearly 80% of all taxes. If that's not the fair share, then, give me a number. Tell me what the number is.
Because I'd go so far as to say that that's not fair.
Agreed. I agree wholeheartedly with that.
So the productive people pay for everything. Top 50% pay 100% of the bills.
From each according to his work, according to his ability, and to each according to his need. That's kind of the mantra that they have.
Yeah, so just taking a great big giant step back, and let's really hammer home the most important thing about the fair tax proposal. You keep your whole check. Now, granted, your state and local governments might have taxes, and that can't be controlled at the federal level rather deliberately. But, you know, what the FICA are you taking out of my paycheck doesn't exist anymore. Okay? Like, if you're a $15 an hour employee, that's actually what you make, minus any state taxes. And that goes back to the 30% sales tax thing. They're doing a trick. Taxes currently are calculated on an inclusive basis. That means they're included in the total. Hence the word inclusive. Something like a sales tax is calculated at an exclusive basis. That means it gets added after the total. But the fair tax is not an exclusive tax. It's an inclusive tax. The easiest way to say it would be, if something costs $1 right now and there's a 30% sales tax, well, you think, okay, now it costs $1.30. But the fair tax rate is actually 23%, and it's inclusive, which means if something costs $1 right now, 77 cents go to the thing, and 23 cents go to the fair tax. So it doesn't actually raise the price of anything. It just restructures everything. So for them to say that it's a 30% sales tax is a lie. And it's a lie by omission, because they're not telling you, oh, yeah, by the way, you just get to keep your paycheck. And to really kind of hammer the point home, if you have a 20% effective tax rate under the current system, well, that means 20% of your money goes to taxes. That's an inclusive rate. However, if you were to calculate that same amount of tax the way they're calculating the fair tax, you'd actually have a 25% tax rate. And I know math is hard to do verbally without a whole bunch of whiteboards and everything. But I'm telling that 30% thing is a lie. It's said in such a way as to make you think everything's just going to get 30% more expensive. And just as a pot shot, like things haven't already gotten 30% more expensive under the Democrats as it is. So it's real fucking rich that they're going to talk as though somehow they're the authority here. But no, in and of itself, when they hit you with the 30% sales tax thing, they're not wrong. They're lying to you. They want you to be afraid of a plan that will eliminate the IRS and put more money in your pocket.
And Pitt Danny says, with many of the side hustle jobs, eBay flea markets and others, they're taxing items that the tax has already been paid for. Then if you can prove low income, some of that tax is refunded. That touches on part of the problem. When they say that Republicans want to just throw a 30% sales tax, they're obviously lying for all the reasons Cameron just said. But here's the other piece of it, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring up this presentation that I put together for you. Very basic, but first you've got taxes at the manufacturer level. Federal excise tax imposed on certain goods and services. Manufacturers also pay a tax on their production activities. The amount of tax paid is based on the value of the goods, blah, blah, blah. And here's the thing. The taxes that you pay are nothing compared to the amount of taxes that you're actually paying on any given item, because you're being charged a sales tax on an item, on a piece of property, a consumable good, a service, etc., where before that end product comes to the end user making the final purchase, where they pay that state sales tax, at the very beginning of the process, when the first raw materials were taken out of the earth, trees for paper, rubber for hoses, et cetera, taxes are paid on the production and generation of those materials just to be sold to be made into whatever the widget is. And then taxes charged on the labor and the material as the widget is produced, and then the widget gets packaged and taxes paid on it again. And at every level, what happens is, so contractor company that extracts the raw material pays excise taxes, and that reflects in the price that is paid by the manufacturer that buys the raw material to manufacture the parts for the widget. Then they pay an excise tax and labor taxes and all that on the production of the widget before it's sold to the distributor, right? And that happens depending on the...
At every step of the way.
Right, and depending on the complexity of the product, like you start talking about your iPhone or your flat screen television or your car, you're talking about dozens of steps along the way where that tax is being taken out. And at each step, when the next guy makes the purchase, he's paying a price that reflects the taxes that were already paid, plus paying an additional tax, which inflates the next price to the next person who buys it, all the way up until it gets to the end user, and then you again pay an additional sales tax on top of all the other tax that you've just paid. So part of the fair tax plan, part of what happens there with the abolition of the IRS and federal taxes, is all of that money, all of that tax is obliterated. And so you'll see your basic prices. This is possibly the only plan that has ever been put forward that actually has a reasonable chance at causing deflation, sustainable, reasonable, and much needed deflation in the current U.S. economy, which is suffering tremendously under the worst inflation it's ever seen.
Oh, yeah. And the most burdensome part of that is the labor tax. If you're a W-2 employee and your employer pays you $12 an hour, you don't cost your employer $12 an hour. You cost your employer about $13 an hour because they've got about an 8% tax on top of whatever they pay you. So, yeah. So 8% of your income gets paid to the tax man, and then your employer has to match it out of his pocket. You want to talk about a thing that could make a huge difference for small business. Oh, we want to help out the little guy, the mom and pop, the family that just wanted to open a bed and breakfast and have a little slice of the American dream and maybe has 5 or 10 employees.
Right.
This is it. Because the hiring people costs more money than just hiring the person. You pay taxes on them as long as they work for you. And then, of course, you have the compliance. That costs money. That costs time. And again, this is a thing that the fair tax eliminates entirely. Something is $1, 23 cents of it goes one direction, 77 cents goes the other direction. Period. Every time. Every time. And on top of that, well, I can hear you type it even from all over here.
I'm sorry, but it
is distracting. But on top of that, nope, you blew me out of the water. That did it. I was going to try and tie something together, and now I'm lost.
Sorry. Okay, well, let me do this. Alex asks, what is the prebate amount they're proposing? I'm not entirely sure. It looks like one version of the proposal says something about $526 a month. I don't know if that's per person, if that's based at a particular income level.
When John Linder wrote the original legislation, they came out to an average of $2,000 a household. So I would suspect that $526 is per person. The prebate is actually the only part of the fair tax that I don't like. You could knock
it's basically a universal basic income.
Yeah, you could knock your tax rate down into the teens without the prebate.
Right.
But it's a sweetener that was put into place because no goods or services would be exempt from the fair tax. That's one of the things that would make it fair. You know, you pay it on the point of sale for everything. So in order to offset that, the prebate was offered so that you're not paying taxes on grits and eggs and all that good stuff.
Right. And Alex says it should be around $25K a year. That sounds about right. That's
$2,000 a month per household. Yeah, $25K a year would be. He's almost bang on.
Yeah,
as those Brits would say.
And then I want to go back up to another comment from Alex. He said, and that is the fair tax's biggest problem, trying to explain it to people. I'm going to give you a little pushback there, Alex. Sort of. It's because of the whole thing. It's part of the same reason the left can't meme. It's not that explaining the fair tax to people is the biggest problem. It's that they can't wrap their head around the very simple idea that the fair tax is really this simple. All you pay is the 23% national sales tax, and that's it. The problem is they cannot process what it means against the current paradigm where we've got the liberal designed progressive tax system that taxes everything before you even get a chance to be robbed on it, which raises all their prices. It's not the fair tax that's difficult to explain to people. It's a 23% national sales tax, and there's a prebate of about $25,000 a year. That's not complicated. It's that they cannot get their heads around a tax plan that isn't a dozen phone books stacked on top of each other and just run. Your average American just operates under the assumption that they need to trust someone else to fill out their tax documents because it's way too complicated for them to do it themselves.
Well, it is. There's no way any one person could be an absolute authority on the U.S. tax code. It's just, I mean, I guess Rain Man could, but outside of that, it's just not going to happen. So, and the last thing that I want to touch on here is a lot of these people are very, very concerned about the rich paying their fair share. It's why Robert Fourth Reich and Liar-Watha use the language that they use. Oh, it's not fair that the rich people get a break. Look, let's be clear. Rich people get breaks all the time under the current system. It's designed that way on purpose.
Yeah, and
there's no such thing as lobbyists anymore. They go away.
Right.
Because everything is taxed exactly the same way across the board. There is no longer anything to lobby for.
And you've told me a story before, Cameron, about talking to a chick at a bar and trying to talk about the fair tax. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, relate that real quick because I want to point something out related to that, and then we'll put a pin in this and call it a day.
Well, long story short, she was an attractive bartender who I don't know how this conversation even got started, but once it got rolling, once she realized that rich people would be able to keep their whole check, she was horrified. Well, how in the world are they going to pay their fair share if they get to keep their whole check? And I didn't get the chance to explain to her, so, look, poor people are not going to pay the fair tax on a yacht. Poor people are not going to pay the fair tax on a $2 million home. Only rich people are going to pay that. It's actually going to be harder for rich people to dodge taxes under the fair tax. And I don't even want to say dodge taxes. They're not dodging anything. It's legal. It's part of the tax code that they're allowed to write everything. When Donald Trump said, oh, yeah, I took millions of dollars in losses one year to offset my taxes, that makes me smart. He was right. The tax code is designed to be able to use that way.
Yeah, by people like Liar-Watha, by people like Elizabeth Warren. their campaigns are funded by people who want them to create a tax code which unfairly advantages those constituents. So
yes, exactly. So let me just, pin it right here for me. The thing that was a real impetus for me was Styx's video. And it's no secret that I'm a big fan of Styx. I watch his videos every day. And it occurred to me that if he got so much wrong in good faith, there's probably an entire generation of people that are slightly younger than, I'd say, the average age of everybody involved in the BFM that just don't understand the fair tax at all and don't realize how different their entire life would be if suddenly there was no more money being taken out of their paycheck before they got it. Because I've said it before, I will say it again, that's some mafia shit. Like, oh, no, I went ahead and took my cutout on the front end to do you a favor. Yeah, sure, buddy. Pull the other one. It's got bells on it.
Alex is asking what's exempted under the current proposal. I'm not entirely clear on that yet, Alex. We were talking more broad strokes this morning, so that's something that we may cover in a later show. Because I guarantee you this: the fair tax is something we're going to keep talking about on this show.
Nothing is exempt. Instead, what they do is they basically use the same type of cost of living calculations that they use for things like Social Security to do an estimate of, okay, you have to buy this much food and you have to buy this much gas on average in order to live and function and participate in society.
Cam. Like I said, man, we were hitting broad strokes this morning. It is already 8:00. I was giving him that answer precisely because I don't want to get into the weeds right now because we need to button up this show.
Oh, it is 8:00.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
thank you.
I know you need to get I know you need to get off the phone and I need to get on the road. So thanks for calling in, and I'll talk to you later.
All right.
All right. Yeah, and Alex, those are good questions, and those are the kinds of things that we'll be talking about in later shows. Absolutely. I am going to go ahead and put a pin in it right there. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. Like I said, fair tax is something we're going to be talking about in much more detail. I've even made a few contacts at the fair tax organizations in Georgia that will hopefully be getting some interviews with those guys. Excuse me. And apart from that, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in that this morning. Thanks for watching this morning. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow.